Bulletin Board drivers, welcome to the Channel 19 Experience Trucker Podcast. This is where the real stories roll, straight from the blacktop.
Breaker 19 villains, you got your ears on. You're dialed in to the Channel 19 Experience, the podcast that keeps one foot on the dash and the other on the future of trucking. Just kidding. Just checking to see if you're awake up there front door. I'm your host, Tony. It's Sunday, August 10th, and this is episode number 25. This week, we're firing up the bulletin board with a follow-up on last week's profit calculator, a little comparison of my profit calculator versus Overdrive magazines. Then we're headed into the pre-trip with fresh safety data from the ramp-up of ELP enforcement. We'll look at the enforcement gap, some of the fraud still slipping through, and why regulators can't take their foot off the gas. From there, we'll shift into a little rail news that could shake up long-haul lanes and a little warning to shippers chasing short-term savings. Over in the money line, the smell of my wife Kawanna's brisket is in the air, and it's got me thinking about patience, timing, and heat control. We'll connect that to the latest job revisions, trucking employment shifts, used truck prices, and why the big fleets are cutting back on new iron. It's part market update, part wake-up call with a Diesel Damas forecast you'll want to hear. And then we're shifting gears into something a little more fun. An interview with the woman who's been on this ride with me for over 20 years. My wife Kawanna joins the show on the microphone side this week. This week, while putting the show together, I had some of our friend Shane Britt's music on. He's got a small venue show this week in Phoenix that we're both going to. There's something about slow smoked brisket and good country music that just works. If you're not driving, it's a great time to like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends.
Paper breaker 19, can I get a radio check? Heard it pretty quiet out here on Channel 19. Well, there's a plain white rapper taking pictures at the state line. Hit the jake brake quick, we ain't paying no fines. The driver swing into the interstate, body shop south at exit 5. Building trucking ain't the same as it was. We're the last of our kind.
At the Mid-America Truck Show, I had the fortune to meet up with Mike Barber, founder of Truckers Wealth. Both of us have a passion for understanding the uniqueness of truckers and sharing our knowledge wherever we can. Mike is a seasoned financial professional. He has over 20 years of dedicated experience serving the trucking industry. Truckers Wealth has created a specialized financial hub where truckers can receive expert advice and tailored solutions to build wealth, minimize taxes, and secure lifetime income for themselves and their families. Check out his website, truckers-wealth.com, and look forward to seeing him on the program here soon. Grab that safety vest. It's time for the pre-trip. This week, we're starting with a couple quotes that cut through the CB chatter of "I ain't got no panties on" or "Baba Booey's." Neither of these men ever climbed into a Peterbilt or pulled a flatbed, but they know a thing or two about pushing through when times get tough. First up, the pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails. That's by William Arthur Ward. Ward was one of the most quoted American authors of the 20th century. And that line about adjusting the sails hits square in the gut right now. Conditions in trucking are shifting, and they'll shift back someday, but just waiting for that day is an expensive strategy. And then there's this one from a man who knew a thing or two about weathering storms. When you're going through hell, keep going, by Winston Churchill. He was Britain's wartime prime minister, and although he wasn't in the freight game, he kind of was. War has a very large, high-stakes component to logistics to it, and in those dark days, stopping meant certain defeat. In trucking and in business, it's the same. When the market's ugly, everyone is moving in on your freight, and the load boards look like a ghost town. The only way out is through. Now, both these quotes line up perfectly where we're headed this week, because if there's one thing this industry has proven over and over, adapting while going through hell to keep going eventually leads to better times. And speaking of adapting, let's swing by the bulletin board. Quick trip down memory lane to last week's talk about knowing your numbers. Last Sunday, I get done editing and posting last week's episode, profit calculator and all. I'm relaxing, checking emails, and here comes Overdrive Magazine's newsletter. And lo and behold, they've got an article about their profit calculator. It's developed with Gary Bucks. So, of course, I spent some time this week playing with their calculator, and I wanted to understand the differences in approach. In some ways, there's only so many ways to skin a cat, but you can get there a couple different ways. And if you haven't seen my calculator yet, I recorded a YouTube video so you can go check out a step-by-step guide showing how to plug in your numbers and see what you're really making on each load. And this isn't a showdown of two different philosophies, more like two mechanics comparing toolboxes. We've got different tools, but we're after the same goal, helping you know where you stand before you roll. My spreadsheet takes a per mile approach. Every load, fixed and variable expenses, full profit picture. Overdrive's and Gary's leans on a per day costing model. You can check theirs out in the show notes. I'll drop a link in there right next to mine as well. And it wasn't what I expected, I'll be honest, when I first pulled it up. But after thinking about it, I see the merits of it. And it might even be worth considering putting both approaches in the same tool. Use the worst results as your baseline cost before saying yes to a load. Because that $1,500 500-mile run, it might look great on my per mileage basis, unless it's tied up to your wagon for 5 days. And then you'll see a difference play out in Gary's calculations versus mine. Another pain point that I saw feedback on was, and it came up multiple times, and it was, I don't have time to run loads through a calculator. Now, I haven't talked to Gary, but I imagine our first reaction's the same. Do you really want to figure out halfway down the road that the run you took isn't worth the fuel you're burning? And I get it, right? When you're booking a load, it feels like you don't have time. That's why I've been thinking about a faster way. And maybe even bringing Todd Waldron on the show from truckstop.com to see how their tools maybe helped solve that or could help solve that. But here's my rebuttal in the meantime. Do a little homework in my calculator first. Enter your base numbers, and then your base numbers are always there. Then all you need for a quick check is miles and revenue. That's it. And it's going to tell you what your margin is. Now, if you want a copy, email me, inbox@channel19experience.com. I make you a personal copy, and if spreadsheets make your palms sweat, I'll walk you through it. Check out my tutorial on the Channel 19 Experience YouTube channel. That link is in the show notes as well. And also, quick note, I've updated my Be a Guest page on the website. Scroll to the bottom, book your interview slot, or reach out via email or social media messenger. Anyway, we're here to help. All right, let's fire up the pre-trip. We've got some new safety data and some big rail developments to cover. Let's start with an old issue that refuses to leave the main stage. Back in episode 20, I talked about a report from 2011. FMCSA published its report on English language proficiency and safe CMV operation. The findings weren't sugar-coated. Carriers with more drivers lacking English proficiency had higher crash rates. Roadside data showed more citations. The FMCSA report also found enforcement was all over the map. Some states enforced aggressively, others barely at all. I think we all know which states those were. And fast forward more than a decade, a new report this week came out. Same grim result. Limited English proficiency is still linked to higher crash rates. And some states are still refusing to step up. But elsewhere, enforcement is waking up. Since June 25th, the FMCSA has put more than 1,200 drivers out of service for failing English checks on the roadside. But here's what I'm curious about. What's happening to these trucks and these loads and these drivers? Does somebody come rescue this load with an English-speaking driver? And the carriers? Why aren't these violations triggering immediate investigations? And it's not just mom and pops or the air quote Chicago carriers. Large carriers are in the mix too. And it's not just language proficiency. Folks like Dale Prax over at Freight Validate keep calling out other fraud. Authority swaps, cycling MC numbers, ducking audits, slipping bad actors back on the road. It's insidious, it's dangerous, and it undercuts honest carriers doing it right. So here's the industry ask to regulators. Keep the pressure on. Root out the fraud, shut down the shell games. You're off to a good start. It's time to flip it into overdrive and make sure the folks sharing the road are qualified, legal, and accountable. Now let's pull a hard left into the rail landscape. Big headline this week. Union Pacific is merging with Norfolk Southern. Rail history says mergers aren't just about efficiency, they're about consolidating power and sometimes about survival. Now, one camp says that service is going to improve, but the shipper side says competition is dying. The reality, the results are probably somewhere in between. Some things get a little more efficient. In some ways, they use the greater leverage power against shippers to improve their rates and margins. For trucking, less rail competition means more pressure on our lanes. This week, rail also promised faster LA to Chicago service, aiming right dead center at Team Trucker Freight. On paper, it looks like a bold move, but as one logistics vet told me, big promises in the boardroom, smaller results in the yard. Now, I've run that SoCal to Chicago corridor plenty on the rail, both putting 53-foot trailers on it, containers on it, especially on the BN. The reality, there's bottlenecks, there's weather delays, there's track issues, there's union slowdowns, and spotty service. Now, some loads with relaxed timelines might switch. Clock-driven team freight, it's staying on the highway. And rail still has freight security issues. High-value loads are going to stay on teams to keep rolling and stay safe. In the short term, maybe this shaves rates a little bit. Long term, every load that the rail pulls right now from trucking is a dent in the overall trucking capacity. And when demand swings back, that spike's going to hit harder than most people expect. Like Warren Buffett said, you'll find out who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. Through Berkshire Hathaway, he owns BNSF and 100% of Pilot Flying J, the nation's largest truck stop chain. So he knows a little bit about both sides of this. But to the shippers, here's your wake-up call. Be careful how much trucking capacity you help destroy for short-term savings. Truckers remember, we know who stuck with us and who bailed for a cheaper ride. I was in those discussions and meetings on the shipper side back in the mid-2000s, when the shippers had the upper hand then too. Lots of people with short-term bonuses and short-term visions will say stick it to the carriers when they have the upper hand. But when freight capacity tightens again, and it will, rail will serve its usual customers, and you'll be naked in the spot market at the worst time. That's your pre-trip for this week. The pre-trip is complete, no defects detected, but that's just my opinion. If you find defects, let us know. Get that seat adjusted. Let's push the buttons in. We've got work to do. Trans-Carolina Permits is based out of North Carolina. They've been in business since 1977, and they've got a team with a ton of experience in all of our favorite part of trucking, which of course is the government. They provide a portfolio of services for the trucking industry, not to mention they have a compliance program. They'll help you with clearinghouse setup and queries, IFTA, and mileage reporting, so your state-by-state mileage, your fuel purchase tracking, and get that wrapped up into a nice little bundle for quarterly filings. They're a one-stop shop for your trucking needs. You can find them on Facebook and LinkedIn, or check out their website, transcarolinapermits.com, or give them a call at 1-800-899-4870.
It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 Experience. Let's hit the road.
Welcome back. Let's flip that turn signal on and drop the hammer in the money line this week. It's Sunday afternoon, the podcast is rolling, and the smell of brisket is already hanging in the air. My wife Kawanna's out back tending to the smoker, and me, I don't have the patience for brisket. I've got about the patience to grill a steak. Brisket, tri-tip, those long investments of time, that's her specialty. I'd have the thing on high and be Googling how to fix a dry biscuit before the first hour was up. She's the yin to my yang. She plays the long game. I want results now. And maybe that's why I can't help but look at what's going on in the economy right now and think somebody's got the heat set wrong. We've got job revisions this past week that wiped away months of air quotes good news, and then the subsequent firing of the stats chief at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. The headlines on the left say Trump didn't like the numbers, so he shot the messenger. Now, maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but here's what I do know. These statistical revisions have been a problem for a long time, no matter who's in office. The timing on this, though, brutal. The revisions dropped right after the Fed's latest meeting, where they emphatically voted not to lower interest rates. The Fed's in a trap. Sure, they could lower the benchmark rate, but the trucking community isn't going to see a big drop in real world interest rates. Why not? Trucking is a very bad looking bet right now. Collateral that keeps dropping in value, rates dropping, cash flow shrinking, public trucking quarterly reports that have the optimism of a Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl outlook. Best case scenario, maybe it tickles the housing market enough to move some inventory. But right now, homes for sale inventory is stacking up like containers in a rail yard. And in a lot of housing markets, that means price cuts are coming. Not great if you're a seller, but maybe that's the only thing that gets this housing market unstuck. Now, here's the air quotes good news from this past week. Depending on how you look at it, trucking jobs ticked up in July. That's the headline. Dig deeper, and it might not be good news at all. Some of that growth is likely just owner-operators and small fleet owners bailing out of their businesses for the perceived stability of a company driver's seat. And here's the kicker. That migration from shadowy 1099 setups and true independence into W-2 company drivers is part of why these stats are so murky in real time. You can't measure the health of the industry if what you're really counting is people abandoning one role for another inside the same sandbox. It's survival, not expansion. Meanwhile, used truck inventory is growing, but prices are dropping. That's a nightmare combination that makes banks even less willing to lend on trucks. Big fleets see the same writing on the wall. Werner just announced they're cutting $40 million from this year's truck buying budget, letting their fleet age instead. Add up all the CapEx cuts from major fleets announced recently, and we're talking well over $100 million pulled back in just the past few months. OEMs are feeling it too. Shrinking shifts, smaller workforces, fewer new trucks rolling out of the factory. We're still seeing closures, 3 just last week that I talked about last episode, and fleets offloading trucks and drivers. Rates keep getting pushed down, wages right along with them. And also in the news, UPS, they're still trimming, offering buyouts to their drivers, partly because their Amazon business is shrinking as Amazon pushes more freight through its own contractor network. If I throw on my Diesel Damas robe and break out my crystal ball here, it feels like Trump's economic plan is sputtering. The play seemed to be slow the economy down with the tariffs, then hit the accelerator with a Fed rate cut and lighter regulations to power through the midterms with a roaring economy. But the Fed put a little water in the fuel tank and didn't play ball. The tariff game isn't producing the wins they'd hoped for, or as fast as they'd hoped for, and the best spin available now is look at all the tariff money we're collecting, which still came out of our pockets one way or another. So the danger here, we carbon up this economy idling too long, and then when they try to restart it, the crankshaft gives out before the drive shaft even gets moving. And that's why adapting, knowing when to hold, when to fold, and when to throw a tarp on and haul something you might have turned down a couple years ago might be the difference between being in the game next spring or watching from the sidelines. And speaking of adapting, Kawanna's brisket is proof some things take time, patience, and a steady hand. That's why she's in charge of brisket, and why in this business I have to remind myself not everything can be rushed. All right, enough economics for today. Let's lighten it up with someone whose family tree and career has every bit as much diesel as mine, my wife, Kawanna. Let's drop it down to line 4 for a quick break, talk to Kawanna, and then after that, I'll catch you on the flip side with the post trip. True TMS is a cloud-based transportation management system. Being in the cloud makes integrations faster and you're able to access the platform from anywhere. It has intuitive planning, on-demand reporting, and easy order creation, rating, and invoices, which turns tedious admin work into streamlined automated workflows. The folks at True TMS have decades of trucking and liquid experience, and they care about this industry. They don't just sell you a product, they're invested in your success. Visit their website, truetms.com, and of course, tell them Channel 19 sent you.
More than anything, this show's about bringing back the sense of community we used to find on the CB, especially good old Channel 19. No rants, no corporate spin, just long-form storytelling from someone who's been behind the wheel, built the fleet, hit rock bottom, and climbed right back up.
All right. Well, this week we've got maybe my most special guest ever. Well, maybe not maybe. It is my most special guest ever. My wife, Kawanna, joins the program. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, husband, Tony.
Might be the strangest, most awkward interview yet. It's easier with a stranger, maybe, than interviewing somebody you know. All right. So, first things first, since I've been talking about it all episode long, tell us how the brisket turned out.
The brisket turned out wonderfully. You doubted my skills. I doubted my skills. At least we had a contingency plan and we did not have to use it. I'm really impressed with myself.
Yeah, you took the hard path, the harder path than I would have taken. I would have went straight to the oven, set my temperature, and go find something else to do for 10 hours, but you took the hard road.
But then you wouldn't have had the experience and the taste and the flavor of all that apple smoked wood chips that I burned up in the process.
Yeah, it turned out amazing and it was worth all the effort that you put into it. To let everybody know, it's our family's first brisket that we've made. Well, that you've made.
Hmm.
I didn't help much at all. I carried the apple chips and the charcoal to the car. That was about it. But it was amazing. Everybody loved it. I mean, the flavor was great, especially like in the fatty parts. Like it was so flavorful. And
Hmm.
and like you didn't even do like I mean, I think a lot of the recipes say like do a rub like 24 hours before and you didn't do that. You just went with the smoke and the flavor that you put on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thanks to the guy, whatever his name is on YouTube, who um, made his video, and I pretty much just followed along. I mean, he didn't put any rub on for 24 hours, so he made a very good video. Came out very nice.
So you also grew up as a trucker kid like me. Your
Yeah.
dad was a over the road trucker. What was that like? What do you remember about that growing up with a dad being a trucker for part of his career?
Well, it was mainly for the first part of my life. So I think by the time I was um 6 or 7, he had, stopped trucking. But I do remember my mother getting up really early, making coffee for him at times, and she'd load us up in the car and drive him around to his truck uh, and see him off. Um, I do remember his cab over. He had a cab over. Uh, I remember things like the little black and white television that he had in his truck. And oh, he worked for a place. I guess because he was an owner operator, he was leased onto a place called Navajo. And back then, Navajo had these, sky blue jackets with a big Indian head on the back of it. And, Navajo nowadays, the colors are totally different. Don't ask me why I remember that, but I do.
So you grew up a little bit in trucking, and then you found your way back into trucking, where you and I met one another in the operations floor of a large carrier. And that was your first time back in trucking, right?
Yeah, yeah. After my father, his business went out of business. I guess he had an accident in his truck. Um, yeah, when I was a kid, and then I got back into it when I became a dispatcher. Yeah, years and
Yes.
years, years and later.
And years ago. Um, yeah, so coming back in, having spent all that time away from trucking, like I was curious, I don't know if I ever asked you, like what was it like? You know, what was the surprise? What was wow, this is weird. Trucking's kind of a strange deal. Like anything that stood out from kind of getting back into it?
Well, truthfully, everything was weird. I mean, I was a kid. I mean, my had I been in a truck before? Yes, my father had taken us on, trips from Pennsylvania to Ohio. Um, but that is pretty much my experience with trucking. Um, he used to take my brother along with him quite often. My brother's older than I am, so he has more memories. And when I got into trucking, into dispatch, I I started from zero. So I literally like knew nothing.
Yeah, and so anything anything surprise you when you found out and you're like, wow, this is interesting that this is actually how these things get done, or like what surprised you?
Yeah, I think what surprised me the most was the lingo, the language, because there were so many different things to learn, and it was really fascinating to me. I still think it's fascinating, every company that I've been into after, I got back into trucking. Um, it amazes me from the different kinds of companies. Like, of course, the first one was dry van, and then I went over to a reefer company and learned some more things there, and then, to flatbeds and um, those type of things. So it was now, working with things that are like that are tankers. So every move has been a learning experience, just kind of building upon, you know, things that I've learned previously.
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, it's all still about getting something from A to B, but the lingo and the terminology and the kind of the culture of it is slightly different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all of the different types of trailers all need something a little different. So
Right.
it's like, oh, you know what? I never even knew about that. It's because I'd never worked with those type of trailers before.
Yeah, and you, like you mentioned, you kind of ran through a whole bunch of different experiences that you had at the different companies. Like there's all kinds of things that you have to learn just to understand what's different about that business, whether it's like, you know, you said you got into the reefer game there for a while
Hmm.
afterwards. I mean, that was a whole, it was a totally different kind of role, right? Um, in some respects. Plus, you got the reefer fun of pallet exchange and, you know, lumpers and that kind of stuff.
Oh
And that,
yeah, and washing out the bulkheads and things like that.
yeah, hauling produce has its own fun and nuances. And, you know, and then you
Yeah,
got into, you know, well, even the difference like in a regional fleet and how the dispatch is structured as opposed to, you know, a 2000 truck fleet where you've got really segregated duties. Then you kind of went to a job where, you know, you had a section of the country and it was a lot, you know, you had to handle a lot of the different duties for that area.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you got me thinking back to ancient history now. So I really, in some of the places, I don't even remember um, what I really, a lot about the dispatch and what was going on. I remember like the programs that I was using, but the little intricacies, I totally don't even remember a lot of that.
Some trucking is best in the rear view mirror.
Yeah. Hey, well, I remember that, they tempt their ice cream and they don't like it when their ice cream is not frozen. They'll refuse
Right.
it.
Yeah. Runny ice cream is always bad. All right. Well, Here's one other question I wanted to ask you since, now I get to interview my wife and I got you on the spot. So,
Uh-oh.
I mean, I'm curious because, sometimes, maybe a lot of times in life, even in a marriage, sometimes you get wrapped up in your own perspective and, maybe it takes 20 years before you ask your spouse what was it like for you? So it got me thinking as I was thinking about preparing to interview you, like like when I went back trucking, because we weren't together my first go around as owner
Right.
operator, small fleet owner, but then I went back to it after we had met when I wasn't a truck driver, and then I went
Hmm.
back to being an owner operator. Like, I'm curious what your perspective was when I did that and what it was like being, I mean, I guess I probably should have asked then, but like what's it like being a trucker's wife to somebody who knows?
Well, um, it was definitely interesting. And we have a blended family. So it was hard trying to um incorporate our lives together because you'd be gone and then you'd just be back for a few days and then gone. It's kind of like starting all over again, trying to get the whole family dynamic back together. So that was a struggle um, for me. Probably a struggle for you too.
Yeah, a little bit it felt like I was a guest,
Hmm.
you know, like, hey, everybody here's got a routine and none of that routine really revolves around me, but here I am.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, you got home and it's almost like, well, now he's home and it kind of throws off the routine because I'm used to doing XYZ. Well, I did get used to doing like, when you came home and the laundry and, you know, food and cleaning stuff and packing stuff back up. So, I mean, I got used to that. But yeah, as far as the other things goes, it was really hard um with the whole family dynamics thing. You still kind of felt like you're single, but then you're not single on the weekends. It's just really an odd situation.
Yeah, and about the time, maybe you get a little bit used to the other person not always be standing in the way or asking
Hmm.
you questions that you normally wouldn't have to answer, like, what are you up to? Um, then they leave again, right?
Yeah.
And it starts the cycle all over.
Hmm. Not to mention when you got home too, you had to do your owner operator. So you had a lot of paperwork and receipts and, you know, your business paperwork that you were doing. And that, of course, takes away from time together as well. So even when you were home, it wasn't just, our time or family time because you still
Yeah.
had things to do.
Yeah, it's funny because I've talked about it before on the podcast, like my memories as being a kid growing up and having, you know, a dad come home and being on the receiving end of it. And I don't, it's hard at times in life to think about what other people are going through around you. You kind of get wrapped up in your own perspective at times. Because now, I mean, even thinking about it or hearing you talk about it, it makes me aware of like, I don't know if I thought about that much as it was going on, but I probably should have.
Well, we made it through.
We made
We're
it
still
through.
together.
I was gone just enough to not drive you crazy for the right amount of time.
Yeah, the hard part is when you stopped trucking. Oh gosh.
Yeah, hard on all sides, I'm sure. And,
Oh yeah, I'm
a
sure for
totally
you as
different.
well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure everybody was like, can't you just go get in a truck and get out of here for a bit? Like, we could really use you to like not be here for a week.
And truly the only saving grace was you got a job that you still traveled sometimes. It was like, oh, thank God. He's gonna go for 3 days. Hey. And I'm
Yeah, it
sure
was,
you were happy to be in a hotel room.
yeah, because you get used to certain things, especially with kids, in their
Hmm.
elementary school years. They're noisy, they're messy. You know, they're they're energetic, and when you're used to having your own hand being the only hand on the volume dial in a truck, it's pretty hard to adjust to sometimes of like I can't just turn everything off and have silence.
Yeah. I'm glad that you finally adapted to that over the many years. You're so much better now.
Headphones help. Noise canceling headphones are useful, not just for airplanes. But it is, I think it's very true. The transitions, even people who aren't coming off the road. I mean, some people do, or they come to a local job where they're home every night versus being gone for multiple weeks or a week at a time. It takes an adaptation period, right? To figure that out. It's like being in a whole different kind of relationship, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of like when you first move in together and you realize like, oh, you're that type of person. You're the type of person who thinks like drying the dishes is setting them to air dry and not actually drying them with a towel and putting them away in the cupboard. You think done is they're sitting in the rack, not in the cupboard.
Yeah. Yep. And it definitely, that was when you came off the road, that was really the time when we had to really get to know each other and our family dynamic and everything. It was a bit tough. And we had been together for, how long were you trucking when we started living together?
I think I stopped driving in 2011.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think I went back in 2005, maybe too early 2006.
Wow.
So, yeah, pretty much all except the first maybe year of our relationship.
Hmm.
Up until that point, well, the first year or so, I was not. I
Right.
was in an office then, and then I went back trucking for the next 5 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, several adjustments to make along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
So you went along with me at times when you could, when it made logistical sense, um, to to get you out in the truck and get a bit of that side of the life, and break up the loneliness of me running around by myself. What stands out, good or bad, and your memories of riding along in a truck and getting the full experience?
Well, I'll start off with the good. One thing that I used to love is when we ran into storms, like the lightning was just spectacular at times, and seeing the big dark clouds roll in. Don't ask me why. I love the whole weather thing like that. Um, I enjoyed when we would sleep in the truck and it was raining. I like that sound and a little bit of motion, the wind. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that part of it. And plus, being able to sit in the truck with you and have conversations. We had, lots of long, deep conversations in the truck. So yeah, I mean, that was nice.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say there's a lot of things that I didn't like too. Oh gosh, yeah, and you know me, I don't even want an RV. Probably because of the experience in the truck. But I really, really hate, hate, hate going to use the restrooms in truck stops or, anywhere, especially not days at a time. It it just I don't know what it is about that. And I would not want a portable one in the truck or anything. I couldn't do that either. I know people probably do that. But yeah, the worst part for me is not having a bathroom, a
I think
proper
that's
bathroom.
I think that's got to rank up there on everybody's list. Truck driver, team driver, spouse riding along. I think that's one of the worst parts across the board of trucking is just not, there's something about the sanctuary of your own bathroom that's just better.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, only other things that would raise the hair on my arms is, whenever we were out in the snow. You know me, in cars, period, but out in the truck and I'm white knuckling it, holding on to the door, pushing on my imaginary brake and on my side.
Yeah, definitely in the Midwest, lots of rough weather for a good part of the year to experience. Although
Yeah,
I miss, like, I don't miss driving in the snow and in that kind of weather in a car, but in a truck it's different. There's
yeah. You'd just be like, doo doo doo, driving along, not a care in the world. I'm like, okay.
yeah, and especially when when you spend that much time in a machine every day, there's just a comfort level in the controls and the feel of that vehicle that even in snow, you're more comfortable. Plus, it handles much differently. So you get used to that growing
Mm.
up in it and driving truck for a couple decades in the snow. I miss the quiet of the snow in the truck and even like you mentioned, like the rain and the wind, like same with in the snow, right? There's the sound of the snow hitting the sheet metal and the door and the side of the truck. But I don't know. There's just a certain comfort in it, as strange as it sounds. Just and you're warm, you can get nice and toasty in there.
I like the truck in the snow when it wasn't moving. Once you parked it, then I was just fine. Oh gosh.
All right. So you liked the weather when it was rain and lightning and thunder. You did not like the bathrooms. That's the sum that's the sum of your trucking experience.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't make me haul any mattresses, so I was okay with that.
Yeah, you didn't have to unload freight. We didn't go and try to lump, 3,000 cases of sour cream or something,
Hmm.
or go to a McLean warehouse and have to break down, 22 pallets into 400 small pallets for them of lettuce or something ridiculous. So there you got, I saved you from the some of the aggravating parts.
You saved yourself.
Yeah, that too. Well, not with mattresses and windows and stuff.
Yeah. Did you like the mattresses and windows better than, you know, having to lump pallets of salad for McLean?
Yeah, I mean, I would lump, especially when I was young, because I was kind of cheap. Or when I had multiple trucks and then I was broke, then I would, you know, I guess I didn't enjoy it, but you tolerated it more because you needed the money or wanted the money. It's about the choice you made. The worst part about some of those warehouses, McLean in particular, I'm going to single out, but Cisco and some of these other grocery warehouses or distribution companies that have their small pallets for their own trucks, like just the how long it would take, right? Like it would just take hours because you break down a couple pallets and it explodes into 10 pallets on the floor, and then you got to wait for them to take them away, and then you got to go find some more small pallets, and it just like it could take hours and hours, and you're just like, this could be a 20-minute deal, but it's going to be 5 hours. And, some of it you wouldn't, you didn't get paid for, you didn't get paid very much. And so then sometimes there was plenty of times where it seemed like a good idea at the time. And then about halfway through, you were like, yeah, I should have just paid the lumper and went back in the truck.
Yep.
That's the story of my life in a number of aspects. I thought it was a bright idea, and then it turned out to be not so bright.
You live
Um,
and you learn.
exactly. And you did learn some warehouses you didn't want to go to again, and you learned some warehouses that, yeah, I'm just paying the lumper this time. All right. So, a couple fun questions while I got you here on the phone. Um, well, maybe you kind of answered this one a little bit, but you know, what's your favorite memory of trucking, or what stands out the most of, in your experience now? Because now you've been at this for, 20 years in trucking. What out of all the people, the experiences, stuff you've done, like what stands out to you as, memorable?
Well, I mean, all of the great people that I've met, um, and again, the different things that I've learned going from one company to the other. I really enjoyed learning about uh, the permits when I worked in permitting and border crossing and things like that. Um, yeah, I mean, I like the just learning all the different things about it, and it's been a great experience, inside the trucking companies, not so much out in the truck. And God bless, all the great people out there that can do it. I'm just not built for it more than a weekend or so.
Yeah, I mean, the people are probably the thing that are easiest to remember because there's so many characters and you get to interact with so many different people through these journeys.
Hmm.
And, there's crazy moments, funny moments, you know, uh, and just all the characters that come to life. It's almost, I don't know, when you compare it to other jobs, like, you work on the technology side now. I've worked on the technology side for 15 years. And don't get me wrong, every office has its characters, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's any place quite like trucking when it comes to the characters that it can round up.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the first job where we met, that was by far the most interesting one.
Yeah, then throw in like night shift dispatch. I mean, it's almost like, it's like a sitcom at times, right? Between
Yeah.
between the characters in the dispatch room and the, in the operations floor and the characters and the stuff that goes on through the course of the evening and the weekends.
Yeah. I I really did enjoy that place. I really loved it there.
Yeah, you never knew what was going to happen. And nothing was out of the question, right? Like literally after a couple months in that job, like no phone call would surprise you. Like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, the people wouldn't surprise you. I mean, it was like a huge soap opera there between the people who worked in the building and the drivers. It's like, where did they get some of those drivers from? Okay, this was one thing that I remembered. Um, and I just thought it was so funny. You know how the drivers would come in sometimes, when they parked down at the terminal, they'd come into the building and see the dispatchers and everything. Well, this one guy, he literally came in, and I swear he was hiding behind each of those pillars that were in the building. And he's walking through dispatch, and he'd stop and he'd like hide behind the pillars and peek around. And I'm like, what in the world? Who let this guy in here? What's wrong with it? Was just so many weird drivers like that. I just couldn't imagine. It's like, where are they getting all of them from? Are they going like to the mental hospitals? But yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, a couple thousand drivers at that company, like you're gonna have more than a couple interesting characters in the bunch, and we did.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I have to admit, I'd had my share of crazy conversations with drivers. I mean, wonderful people. It's just, it really just some conversation I didn't think I would ever have with anybody. It just blew my mind. I can't even talk about them. No, but it was really fun.
Yeah, and then there's, I'm sure you had a bit of a different experience as a woman in a dispatch office with, hundreds of phone calls coming in every night with drivers. And, I was a single truck driver too. And, I remember when there would be a woman on the other end and, other than a cashier at a truck stop or a waitress at a truck stop, yeah, or, a lady working at, a warehouse checking you in, like, I there were probably weeks in my early 20s where I didn't have more than a one sentence conversation with a woman for weeks at a time. So, actually having, more than a minute go by and I'm still talking to the same woman. She didn't just tell me to either, pay my bill at the cash register or back into door number 8. This is, you know, an exciting experience to have somebody to talk to.
Yeah. No, I can imagine, and I felt for them too. So I mean, I didn't mind chatting when I had a few extra minutes. I mean, they were very nice people, and yeah, just fun to talk to, and totally platonic. But yeah, I guess I did my part with keeping, helping to keep the spirits up.
Yeah, part mental health worker as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, lots of great folks at that company, both in the office and lots of really hard-working drivers who moved a lot of freight every single day.
Yeah. Yep. That was by far my favorite place um to work and with the drivers and everything.
Yeah, for sure. All right, one last question. If you had one piece of advice for a couple, a trucking couple, what would it be?
Okay. I would say have really good communication and have really good trust for one another. It will make life very easy. I think, I struggled with that and it was totally not anything you did. It was just me and it would have made life a lot easier probably for both of us. I know it was a little bit crazy with the jealousy, but yeah, I would say communication, trust, um, go out together sometimes if you can. Um, and I know some people, I've heard on your podcast, they've even made it work like that, where they would bring, you know, the wife and husband and the kids, or kid or kids would be with them. So it's important to do those type of things to, you know, keep your relationship solid and close.
Yeah, and understanding, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You have to be understanding because, that's their job. You guys both knew what it was. I mean, that's why I don't think I did. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I pressured you for, saying you need to quit trucking or anything because I knew what I was getting into. I did at least have that experience from childhood knowing what the deal was, so it wasn't surprised. But yeah, I mean, you just have to have that understanding, know what trucking is about, have good communication and trust. And I think they'd be able to make it work well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I didn't really date anybody when I first was trucking. And it was a different world, right? Payphones, and I don't even know how you would like what would be even the point. I couldn't figure out what would be the point, like when you don't have a cell phone in the truck. Like I find it hard to believe how people did it. It's funny, I read a story on the podcast a few weeks back. It was from a woman who had passed away. Danny Hall had shared the story that she wrote about kind of what it was like being a trucker's wife only in that era pre-cell phone where you really were, when the husband left home for the week, like you might not talk to him for days.
Hmm.
And like that was a totally foreign concept to me, but even when I was young and it was payphones, it just it like trying to find a girlfriend and then trying to have some level of communication that was not going to fall apart within a couple weeks of here's your two phone calls over a month period of time when it worked out where I was near a payphone and felt like talking. But we went through it together with cell phones, which helped, I think, quite a bit, at least have some level of continuous communication. But I think that brings different challenges too. I think of my brother out there now, and he they talk to people way more. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was cut out for that, like and maybe it's different when you didn't, for newer truck drivers because they don't maybe either didn't grow up in that experience. But yeah, there was times where like the cell phone felt like an intrusion. Like, what do you like? Don't call me. This is my space. I'll turn my phone on when I'm ready for the world to enter the cab of the truck with me.
Yeah, I think you did that sometimes.
Wait,
You were
no,
out. I couldn't get a hold of you.
that was bad cell service.
Yeah, yeah.
There's hardly a cell tower out there in Iowa. Yeah. So definitely, I mean, that's the communication part I think that you mentioned, which is, figuring out what works for the both of you and also learning how to move and, give some ground to the other person and realizing, hey, they need, although I'm comfortable with this amount of communication, that may not be the same amount that the other person's used to or comfortable with. So you kind of got to move off your spot a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, now that we've been married for so long, I mean, I would have a new appreciation, for it if you were trucking. You wouldn't have any problem. Okay, honey, see you next week.
No, now I'm domesticated. Now I've missed home.
That's good. I would miss you too if you were trucking still, but
Well, let's end there while we're on a happy note. All right. Well, honey, thank you for everything. The brisket was amazing. So thank you for that. And everything else in the last 20 years too has been awesome, whether I'm out in the cab or, now you're putting up with a husband who spends half his evenings working on a podcast. You're a phenomenal member of the trucking community and thank you.
well, thank you for having me.
All right, we'll see you in the
Not
other
just on
room.
the podcast, but
Yeah.
in life.
Nice talking to you. We'll see you again some down the road somewhere.
Okay, see you in a few minutes.
All right, talk to
All
you later. Bye-bye.
right, bye.
We're talking trucking life, uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories, and the miles in between. From first jobs to last hauls, the laughs that kept us going, and the lessons that left a mark.
Well, folks, that's going to just about wrap up this run. It's challenging times, no doubt. Listen, observe, adapt, and keep going. And thanks doesn't come anywhere near covering it for our guest this week, my wife, Kawanna. Thanks for stepping out of the brisket smoke long enough to jump on the mic with me. She's been there through the good loads, the bad rates, and everything in between. Don't forget to pay a visit to our friends of the show on social media. Big Cal over at Truckin' with Coffee and Cal. I saw he found his own barbecue this weekend and it looked great. Check out Barry Trahan's page, LouisianaTruckShows.com. Have a look at Dale Prax over at FreightValidate.com. We've got Trucking Per Diem's Crusader, Mike Ritzema, at Superior Trucking Payroll. Deb Labrie and her website, awomantrucker.com. And of course, I-95 Truckers. Al had some more great shots this week as he was out on I-95 in Virginia there, taking shots of rigs rolling by. Coming up, we've got more guests lined up on the show. I continue to be blessed with meeting some amazing folks in this business, and I can't wait to share their voices and stories with y'all. It's still truck show season. A few sweet-looking shows this past weekend. 10-4 Magazine's New Jersey show. Wisconsin had their big truck show, and Tony Justice, he was up there battling through tire issues Friday. He performed Friday night up in Wisconsin and then was trying to get to Virginia for a Saturday night show, but he made it. And speaking of Tony Justice, I'll see him in September at the Old Town Rig Down in Nacogdoches, Texas. And hopefully again at Stars and Stripes and White Lines in Atlanta if I can make it over there in November. In between, there's plenty of shows to get out and see this summer. Barry's show down in Rain, Louisiana, and Lee Owen's show in Searcy, Arkansas, both of which are in late October, and plenty more to come. Joplin, Missouri, Ontario, California. You'll find them all easily on the truckshowlist.com. If you'd like to be on the program, reach out, email me, inbox at channel19experience.com, or hit the contact form on the channel19experience.com website. And now you can also book a time with me by clicking on the Be a Guest button and select a time. And if you're not driving right now, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast with a friend. Thanks for riding along. We've got work to do.
This has been the Channel 19 Experience. If it's about trucking, we're talking about it. All uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories. But we talk about the world of trucking today, too. Everything from legislation to lane changes in the industry. We got it covered. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back at the ranch soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on social media at Channel 19 Experience and the website at www.channel19experience.com. That's channel and the numbers 19. See you down the road.